Welcome back to Old Times Talk. I'm your host, Landon. Today we're going to go all the way back to 1938, where radios were still in most homes, but they weren't in the background like we have today. They were listened to with families sitting around and listening to what the world had to offer. Kids were still playing outside way long after it got dark, and movies were something special. Cartoons like Snow White felt almost unbelievable at that time, and even comic books were starting to imagine heroes who could do the impossible, like Superman. And over in Scotland, life was simple in ways we don't always recognize anymore. Communities were close, people knew their neighbors, and days were shaped by work, weather, and family. In that world, in that year, our guest was born. And today he's here to share what it was like, not from a textbook, but from a lived experience. So let's slow it down a bit and listen to Andy Johnston. Hey everybody, welcome back to Old Times Talk. I'm your host Landon, and I'm excited to have you all here today. Thank you, Andrew, for being on with us today.
My pleasure.
So like I mentioned with your wife, I'll just ask some questions and we'll kind of guide this conversation.
Okay.
But to start off, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Andrew Johnston. I was born in 1938 in a town in West Scotland called Ardrossan, Ayrshire, and I lived there till I was 10 years old.
Did your whole family come down to the United States?
My mother, my oldest sister Betty, and my younger sister Anna, she's 3 years younger, Betty's 3 years older, and my dad had just got released from the Army, World War II, and that's where all his parents were, so he didn't want to leave. You know, but the connection with America is my mother was born in Indiana, you know, because my grandfather Nickel, Andrew Nickel, he left Scotland, went to Nova Scotia, and ended up in Indiana in the coal mines. And he sent for my grandmother. They were not married at the time, but she came over, they got married, and then my mother was born in Indiana, my Aunt Anna, my Uncle John, and I'm trying to remember the year that they went back to Scotland, but it would have to be in the late 20s or early 30s.
Wow.
So they moved back there. But that was the connection with America. That's why my mother was always wanting to go back, because she was a teenager there, you know. So when they moved to Ardrossan, she adjusted very well, but she was like 35 when we left to come to the States. You know, the Queen Mary.
That is crazy.
Yeah. And Queen Mary is in Long Beach now. It's I guess you could call it a hotel, right?
Give the year
When
you came.
Well, I came over in 1948 in December. 1948, I was 10 years old.
And you mentioned earlier that your sister actually had her birthday on the Queen's Mary, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, yeah, the Queen Mary. And when people ask me about the Queen Mary, what do I remember? I mean, it was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It took 4 days. I was seasick for all 4 days. Coming from Scotland, went out with my grandfather fishing on his boat, you know. So, but anyway, the one thing that really stood out is we noticed there was a passenger from India, and he'd wear a different colored turban every day. So when we woke up in the morning, that's the first thing we did. We went out on the deck to see what color turban he had. And then when my sister had her 13th birthday, the captain had us sit at his table, and my mother invited this guy from India.
Did you ever find out why he changed?
I think that's just a tradition, you know, and I'm not really sure religion-wise, but just a very kind man, you know. So I'm not sure if they have to change it every day or not, but I don't think so. think he might have done it for us,
Yeah.
you know?
Probably helped kind of keeping track of the days of what day you were on the
Yeah.
boat, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What was your childhood like in Scotland?
Uh, well, it was during World War II, you know, Lake Renata. I remember going to the bomb shelters, and I can remember playing in those bombed out houses, you know, with the bricks and everything. But it was just a small town. Uh, of course, we didn't have any cars. Uh, the milkman came around. We had to go out there with our uh, devices. He filled it up. Garbage man came around with his horse and carriage. We'd put the trash on the back of his car. Had a lot of good friends. School was good. Uh, I think I really remember. In fact, I've got a picture I'll show you later of my house there. But it was pretty good times. It really was. A lot of celebrations, a lot of folk dancing, singing. You know, with the accordion. My grandfather played the accordion, and just everybody knew everybody else. You know, but on the other street was another area, and we had gangs. You know, we had gangs. We fought a lot.
Really?
Yeah, even at that age. Of course, we played, you know, soccer out in the streets with a tennis ball, because we weren't rich enough to have a soccer ball or a football. So, yeah, but I remember that. I still remember today, even 77 years later, I remember every street, and I've been back there 2, 3 times. Every street where everybody lived, my grandfather, where the castle was up on the hill, where the soccer stadium was, the football stadium, Winton Rovers. And of course, that was our big thing during the week. Every Saturday, we'd go there, you know, for the football games.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you miss it? Or did you miss it, I guess, growing up?
You know, I had trouble coming over. We went right from Scotland. We took the Queen Mary from Southampton, England, came over to New York Harbor. We were late getting into the harbor, and I'll tell you the story who brought us over. But there was a couple of men that met us there, and they said, we missed the train, so you're going to have to spend overnight in a hotel. Okay? So they got us in a taxi, and we had never seen a colored neon sign before. The only thing close to it was maybe a signal at the railroad station. So we drove down Broadway in New York. And the first thing I really remember was a huge premiere of Ingrid Bergman.
Yeah.
Remember the name of the movie?
Not right now.
Yeah, but anyway, Joan of Arc. And it was a big statue of her, but we saw all these different lights and all the Broadway shows. And we got to the hotel, and my 2 sisters and myself, we stayed up the whole night with the window open looking out at Broadway, because we had never seen it before, you know?
That's incredible.
Yeah, it really was, yeah.
So who did end up bringing you?
Well, my aunt and my mother were born in Indiana. When they moved back to Salkitz, that's right next to the Atlantic Ocean, and where I came from too. But they both became members of the Salvation Army, you know, for a few years. But then they met, my Aunt Anna met the missionaries, the LDS missionaries from the Church Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they baptized her. And then when she became old enough, she went back to the States, went to Pasadena on her own, opened up a crochet shop, and she came over after the war, World War II, to visit. And in Scotland, the only thing we'd wear as kids were short pants, long socks. she brought me over a pair of corduroys. And when I put them on, I walked down the street, everybody would come up to me, ask me, what are those? Where'd you get those? You know? But anyway, she told my mother, if you come back to the United States, she'll pay for our passage because it's better schooling for the children, meaning myself, my older sister, and my younger sister. So it took us really 3 years to qualify. And I'd go back to school and I'd tell them, hey, I'm not going to see you guys anymore because I'm going to America. You know, and they go, oh, you really? Da, 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 da. So we didn't qualify for some reason or another. So when school went out, I had to return to school. Oh, Andy, I thought you were going to America. And I said, yeah, but I have to wait. Okay, I said, yeah, sure you are, you know. So anyway, so of course I didn't want to, after school got out for the holidays, my mother told me we were going to have to wait for another year, so I went back. And you could not imagine the harassment I got. So you're going to America, Andy, huh? Yeah, sure you are, laddie, you know. So, but anyway, 3 years later, it was actually December of 1938. That's when we had all our passage and everything. So my aunt paid, I believe it was almost
1948.
1948, yeah. I believe the passage for all of us was close to $500, you know, for us to come over. So, yeah, she brought us over.
Was it hard leaving your dad?
You know, I really didn't know my dad because I was so young when World War II started that he went in, and he was a Royal Engineer, and he went to Germany, fought the wars there and everything. Just like, it's amazing. Her dad was fighting for Germany. My dad was fighting for Great Britain, you know, at the same time. And so when he came back, it was the end of World War II. And so it was basically those 3 years. I really didn't know him that well, but he went to work down at the harbor. And I think what he did was they got the coal and loaded up all the ships and everything. And I remember we used to go down to there. We pick up pieces of carbon, blocks of carbon. And what we'd do is we could crack that. And I was telling you about the gangs on the Fallen Street. What we used to do is we had soda bottles. And what we'd do is we'd put that carbon in there. And if you shook it, you could throw it over the fence to the next neighbors and it would explode. You know, I mean, can you imagine that? Kids that young? I was probably 6, 7 years old, you know? So, but that's what my dad did. But I remember one time at night, I caught him. In fact, my mother would send me every Friday to the pubs to make sure my dad got home because that was payday. I knew I'd go in the pub and I'd look at the owner and he'd go, that meant he wasn't there because he knew why I was there. Yeah. So after 3 pubs, I'd find him, you know, and he'd go, I go home, you know. So, but I remember him opening up his coat one night and he had coal in there to bring home.
Back in those days, like, were you still using coal fires?
Yeah, that's all we had. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It was great. We didn't know anything different, you know?
We take a lot of that stuff for granted these days.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember my mother, what she did one time is she found a crate that oranges came in. I don't know where she got it, but, you know, it was like, 6 feet long, 3 feet wide. What she did was she said, okay, I want you to go up to the coal mine and bring back coal, and I'm going to build this cart. So it was an orange cart, and what she did is she took the wheels off of the tram that the babies, you know, when she'd walk with the babies, she took the wheels off of there and put them on this cart, and then she took some long pieces of wood and nailed one each on each side so I could hold it. So I went up the road, it was probably a mile or so, to the coal mine, got coal and brought it back. And that's how Renata reminds me of my mother so much. The same attitude, the same go, go, go type thing, you know. So
With coming here and you came with your two sisters and your mom, did your relationship with your sisters become very tight-knit?
yeah, I think a lot closer. I think I was probably closer to my younger sister than my older sister because she was actually attached to my mom. So in school, I can't really remember us all being in school together, you know. But yeah, as far as closeness, I don't think we're really, I mean, we looked out for each other, you know, but I think we were still adjusting, you know, especially me. I couldn't assimilate at all, you know, because I was so used to my guys back home, you know, and everybody would make fun of me because of my brogue, you know, and they started calling me Scotty. That's why Renata, she called me Scott once in a while, and I'll call her Renee rather than Renata. So when you hear Scott, that's people I knew back when.
Did you eventually just come to just use the term for yourself, or did it just still get under your skin?
No, I accepted it, you know. I, I accepted it, but I couldn't assimilate, and my mother kept telling me, you got to assimilate, you know. I mean, because nobody I could really still get close to, even in school. I'd fall asleep, and I was really a bad student, you know. But anyway, we moved from, we were in Pasadena, and then my mother got an apartment in Culver City. That's the home of MGM Studios. And I got acquainted with a couple of the guys in the neighborhood, and they said, "Hey, Scotty, what are you doing Saturday?" I said, "Why?" Well, we've got a football game with the next door guys across the street. Could you come and play with us? I said, "Yeah, sure." So I ran home. I told my mom. I said, "Mom, they want me to play football with them." You know. So Saturday I got my shorts on, ran over there, and the guy's name was Richard Swarm. Really became close to him. And he said, "Hey, yeah, great." He says, "Hey, listen, pick up that football, you know." And I looked over there and I said, "Where is it?" He said, "It's over there." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, the brown one." And I said, "Well, where's the pump? How do you pump it up?" He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, you got to blow it up. It's got to be round." He said, "It's a football." And he picked it up and threw it to me. I said, "This isn't a football." He said, "This is American football." I said, "I don't have a clue," you know. So that was great, you know. I mean, those experiences, and you know, they were great. They were really great guys. They really got me going, you know.
Do you feel like they really helped you kind of get integrated into the United States versus feeling very distant?
Oh yeah, yeah. In fact, I really got my sense of humor from them, because it wouldn't matter what you would wear, what you would say. They'd always come back and make fun of what you were wearing or something, you know. "Oh, how come you didn't wear your kilt today, Andy? Why'd you wear those long pants?" You know, and it was always something like that. And what I really had to do is, if I didn't fight back and say something derogatory about them, they would just keep unloading on me. So that's the sense of humor I developed. But I was only probably at that time probably 12 years old, and I thought, football's pretty tough. I've got to learn something else. And I thought about basketball. So my next door neighbor, I was talking to him, and he got me a basketball. So what I did was I there was a sign out in front of our apartment building. It was 3 stories high, but there was a sign there with the address. And what I do is I take the basketball and shoot at that, okay? Shoot it all day long. And then in the back of our apartment was an alleyway, but out by the apartments, they had a place for the women to hang their clothes. And you'd go up these stairs and it was all flat. It covered 4 garage tops. So what I did is I took a ladder and I put it down and I pushed it out to the side where there was just 2 steps. And that's where I started practicing basketball, you know. And I mean, I would play there every single minute of the day, you know. And I came home from school one day on my bike, and as I drove by the alley to go into my apartment, there was all kinds of apartments all the way down. I drove by and I looked up and there was a backboard with a basket, and I looked at it. I thought, oh my gosh, you know. So I kept going. I thought, man, I got to get by and talk to that guy. And as I drove past it a couple of blocks, I thought, wait a minute, my apartment's back that way. And when I came back, my upstairs neighbor had put that backboard up there for me. And I thought, you got to be kidding, you know. And he was a Protestant. I can't remember what religion, but his name was Jim Beer. And he took me to church a couple of times. But anyway, I was out there, and then I got all the buddies to come over and play. We played hours and hours and hours. And I tried out for the junior high basketball, okay? And after a couple of days, they put the name up there, who made the team. My name wasn't there. And I thought, wait a minute, so-and-so made it, but I didn't, you know. So, of course, I went home, I cried and everything. And I knew I'd played with these guys before, and they were horrible, you know. So I got up the energy to go talk to the coach. I said, Coach, I said, I know I'm better than so-and-so. I said, could you give me another chance? He said, okay. He said, grab one of those balls, come on, let's go. So he told me what to do, da-da-da-da-da-da. So he said, okay. He said, you made the team, you know. So a month or so later, we started playing competition. The first game we had, I think it was like at Redondo Beach. And we're in the locker room and putting on our shoes. I'm tying up my all-stars. And the coaches came in. They said, okay, we got up at 5 minutes before we have to tip off. He said, okay, we decided on a captain of the team, and it's Scotty Johnston. And I had my head down, and I thought, you know, I kept up, and I started to cry. I thought, you got to be kidding me, you know. So anyway, that was the basketball. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it really was. I just, when I tell that to people, I go back and it's like it never happened, you know.
That's amazing. You had a neighbor too that put that up and you didn't even know.
Unbelievable, man. You know, he had a couple of kids, but they were babies, you know. Yeah, he lived upstairs from us.
Do you feel like growing up where you didn't really have that father figure anymore, do you feel like it made it even more the worthwhile having people like that step in and do things like that?
Yeah. I would say Jim Beer was probably, I would look up to him more than my father. But my father actually came over 2 years later, okay? And it was hard for him to get a passport and everything else, but he came over and I really didn't know him, you know. I could never really get close to him because he wasn't that, what would you say, Renata? I don't think he had that personality, but I think the war really had an effect on him, you know, pulling him out of there from a small town, then coming back, not really having a job. He worked for Shell Oil Company before he went to war, But then when he came over here, he didn't have a job. My mother worked in a bowling alley as a waitress. And I went there one day, and I took my buddy in with me, and she'd always make us malts, you know. But here comes my dad out of the kitchen carrying a tray of dishes. He was a dishwasher. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I thought, you got to be kidding. I was really ashamed. You know, that's my dad. So, yeah, we really never even became close, I think, till I got in high school, and he was working for Helms Bakery. Helms Bakery was a famous bakery during the Olympics in California.
As we talked about with Renata, right? What's kind of your side of the story to when you guys met?
Same guys I played football with. In fact, we actually played varsity basketball, made the varsity team. I think I was out of high school at the time, but I was talking to all my buddies, and we were going to go skiing, and they always called it off, have to work, da. So after a couple of months, I thought, I'm going to go myself, you know. So I rented some skis. I got in my car, 57, so I have to be 57 Chevy Bel Air. Drove up to Big Bear, which was like 2.5 hour drive. Slept in my car, didn't have any money really, except for it was $5, I think, to ski. And I was skiing, and came down. I can't remember if I'd been there for a day or so, but I was to the front of the line, and I was the next one on the chair, and I heard somebody yelling single. And I looked down the line, it was like 40 people. As her girlfriend Gisela was raised up her pole, and I waved her on. So people got on the chairlift. We were the next ones on. So we're getting up the chairlift, both of us. And she said, "Oh, there's Renata." Of course, I didn't know what she was talking about. I looked down, and I think she just came through the moguls, wiped out, you know. So that was it. But they had actually seen me before at the skating rink a few months before. Didn't you? Yeah. So they were making fun of me because I didn't know how to ice skate. I had to hold on to the railings at first. So then they say, "Wait a minute, that's the guy that couldn't ice skate." Yeah. It was love at first sight. I kept thinking she saw me coming up in their chairlift with her girlfriend, and she fell down so I would see her rather than just skiing down. Yeah.
But my girlfriend never forgave me for marrying him.
Yep. Even a few years ago when we went to Germany. Yeah.
Still never forgave her, huh?
Never. No. Yeah.
What would you say, you know, because you two come from very different cultural backgrounds.
Yes.
How did that influence you guys raising a family?
Well, I think Renata was hands-on. I mean, it was just something instinctive with her, you know, because she was a nanny before, and she was outgoing, and she loved the kids. I found raising a family from her. You know, she would say this and that, and I just loved her to death. I mean, the way she raised the kids, it was just incredible. You know, what they wore, and how they acted, how they ate, what they would eat. But I gleaned so much from her, and I think what she gained from me was kind of a sense of humor. Mm-hmm. You know, because there's no comedians in Germany.
I brought a lot of traditions over.
Yes, yeah, and Well, we were together for probably at the most 6 months before I got drafted, in 62. And I went to Fort MacArthur, and then I got transferred down to Fort Gordon to radio teletype school. And what that was, it was a 15-week course, and there was Morse code involved in that. Do you know what Morse code is?
Yeah.
Da 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 da.
I couldn't tell you how to do it, but I know what it is.
Yeah. So what we had to learn Morse code, and then we had to put it in English on the teletype, radio teletype, and send those messages. So what we'd do is when we went back to the barracks at night, we'd speak to each other in Morse code. And that's how you got it, So I was in the Army for 2 years. Never saw combat, even though it was just the beginning of Vietnam. But we had, the only thing we came close to was the Cuban Missile Crisis, but that was about it. But so I got out of the service, we got married, went to work for my brother-in-law's gopher as a carpenter. And that's how we started. I mean, I remember back in those days, there was no nail guns. Everything was hammered, right? And then you'd have to pick up the plywood and carry it upstairs, and Renata would have to take out splinters of my shoulders every night when I came home from the plywood. Yeah, but it was good. It was, couldn't ask for hard work like that, and it was great training, and really good. Yeah.
What is the best piece of technology that's been invented during your lifetime?
Well, it started off with pagers, okay? And then a couple of my installers had a brick phone, okay? And I had enough money, I bought that big phone from him. And I can remember I was driving into Park City and it went off. And I turned it on and she said, "Oh, is this Andy?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "This is Julie." "Julie from Jordan with the carpet company?" She said, "Yeah." And I couldn't believe it. I talked to her for a while, put the phone down, I just had to take breaths. So that was the first. And then I think I was the first in the family to get a computer. So, and of course then the cell phones, first to get that, but during work had to go pay phones and talk to, it was just crazy, So I think that was a combination of that.
Well, now you got computers in the palm of your hand.
Oh yeah. We were at the Eiffel Tower. I get a call from one of my properties. "Oh, Andy, could you line up the installers to come out to put carpet in number da 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 da?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm in Paris, getting phone calls from Utah. I mean, that's your work. You never leave it. You can never leave your work, with me anyway.
Never thought of it like that, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Being 87, I'm thinking, okay, how many more years do I have before I'm called home? And I really concentrate on promptings from the Holy Ghost. And it came to me, it doesn't matter how long you live, it's what are you going to do with it? And I'm thinking, well, I got to get more involved, but I couldn't get more involved with Renata. She's unbelievable. But I truly believe we wake up every morning with opportunities and challenges, and you'll always get those. You'll always have challenges. You'll always have opportunities no matter what it is. And I don't put anything off anymore, really. I try to get it as fast as I can. If it's a callback or drop in on one of my properties, doesn't matter. So, and I'm so blessed with the callings I've had in the church when we joined. And Renata was going to call you about how we joined the church. I don't know if you've got enough time.
No, absolutely.
Do you?
Please.
Okay. I was in the insurance company, and one of my closest friends there was LDS. I didn't know it at the time. And then I found out later he was on a stake mission. But anyway, Renata had to go to Germany, and he invited me over for dinner. And it just so happened the missionaries were at his house. So I felt good about it, because I was really involved in the Lutheran Church. In fact, I was actually like a counselor with a pastor there. Yeah, this was close to LAX airport, and I'd have to go to all these meetings with him. But anyway, after 2 or 3 months with the missionaries, I really felt great, So I went to the Lutheran Church at middle of the week to our meetings, and afterwards they asked me to say the prayer. In fact, they'd asked me a couple of times, and the pastor said to me as we were walking out, he said, "Andy," he said, "come here." He said, "How come you come up with those prayers?" And I said, "I just felt inspired. I didn't want to tell them about the missionaries, So after a couple of months, I decided, hey, I'm going to join the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I called and talked to the secretary, lined up a meeting with the pastor on a Friday, and I was going to get baptized on a Saturday. So he said, okay. So it was like the middle of the week, and she called me. She said, Andy, could you come on Monday because the pastor's got something to do on Friday? I said, okay. So I got baptized on Saturday. We made the appointment for that Monday with the pastor. And it was amazing because right next door to the church was a stake center. It was amazing. So I went in there, had a word of prayer, and I had to go down this long alley to get to the Lutheran church. And on the way there, I was prepping what I'm going to do. I just sweat like a pig. So I thought, okay, I'll get in there. I'll sit with the secretary. I'll get my courage up because when I go in there, I don't know how I'm going to handle it. So went in the office. Secretary wasn't there. The pastor said, "Oh, Andy, come on in." I said, okay. So I went in there and we started talking about this and that. And then he said, what do you want to talk to me about? I said, well, I told him I joined the Mormon church. He said, what? Then he started scolding me a little bit. He says, why did you join that church? Because they don't even believe in Jesus Christ. And all of a sudden I had him. I said, Pastor, the name of the church is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He said, what? I said, yeah. And then we started talking. I really got the confidence to tell him I took the missionaries and done it. So that's how we joined.
So did she come back from Germany and?
Yeah, it was a little before that, and I think you started taking the lessons too at the same time.
Yeah, of course. I wasn't really happy about it, when I came.
Yeah, sure.
And what happened though, the Relief Society came over, invited me to come to homemaking. I was really impressed with that. And then they also invited to come over and have the children come to church, to the youth organizations there. And I was really impressed. And to me, it was a safe haven for us, for children to grow up the way, And I really enjoyed that. So that was my first impression with the church. I was not convinced with Joseph Smith or anything, but I was really impressed with the church about that first. That's why I joined the church to begin with, before I really gained a testimony of the church.
Yeah. And then we moved here in 79, and we were the third home here in the subdivision. But anyway, went to the 6th Ward. I was there. They made me secretary. in the bishopric. And then I had Bishop Bankhead. He was going to be, we built the 28th ward. We physically built that. Bishop Bankhead, who was director of real estate for the church, he became the bishop, and he called me to be first counselor. I thought, he didn't even know me. How could he call me? You know? So that was so enlightening. He was just incredible. But he was director of the church, and he'd have to leave every other week because he'd have to go to non-members places like even down south, and because they wanted to donate their property to the church. All over the world, you know? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And he, of course, I had to perform the marriages and the funerals and everything, but all the callings I've ever had, I've always been connected with the youth, always. So coaching, church, they all came together, you know? It's just unbelievable.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, we've had some great callings, you know?
And I think in closing, right, what's advice that you would give to the listeners?
I think one of the things I really appreciate, and I've had people that have, got married, all these fancy weddings, everything, got divorced. Renata and me had a simple marriage in Santa Monica. I mean, we've both have our differences, how we look at things, but we glean from each other so much. If I go through something with Renata and I say, I'm not too sure how to handle this, she'll go in the office, she'll get on the computer, and likewise, she'll come to me and she'll say, I'm not too sure how to do this. So if you're married, if you don't have someone to share those with, because you grow up facing the same challenges, same opportunities, and you just become closer and closer. There isn't anything I couldn't tell Renata, and there isn't anything she couldn't tell me. I mean, we've traveled throughout the world. I mean, we went to Africa, to the Serengeti. That's where all the animals converge, and I mean, you can sit in the same spot for months, never see the same animal. All the zebras, wildebeests, lions, so we've had great times.
But the main thing is we got our temple marriage. We just don't have a civil marriage. We have the temple marriage, which is important.
Yeah. So I think we both focus on, how can we help our children? They go through some challenges and we can help them, or anybody in the ward that needs any help. And we know some of the problems that people are going through because we went through the same thing. When I was a ward missionary, we had an individual that was inactive, and we went over there, and he said, the reason why I'm not active is because I smoke and I'm an alcoholic. And I said, well, so was I. He said, Brother Johnston, you were? I said, yeah, before I joined the church. He said, well, how did you overcome it? And back and forth throughout the weeks and everything, he really became active. Those type of things, like I just said, because we went through them before, we can even see it in their face.
Well, thank you, Andy, for participating in the podcast today.
You bet.
It's been amazing. But with that, I'm Landon, and this is Old Times Talk. Thanks for tuning in to Old Times Talk. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss when wisdom drops. If you or someone you know would like to be interviewed on this podcast, head to oldtimestalk.com and click on the referral tab. And remember, keep the old stories alive. But with that, I'm Landon, and this is Old Times Talk.